Unconventional convention. Democrats kick off their mostly virtual event tonight, why Texans were hoping for a bigger role. The Hispanic vote. A new poll shows Hispanic Texans favor Biden over Trump, but the battle ahead won't be easy. And back to school. How Texas private school students are returning to the classroom amid the coronavirus pandemic. Capital Tonight starts right now. Thanks for joining us here on Capital Tonight. I'm Karina Kling. This week's Democratic National Convention will be like no other. With the coronavirus still raging, the event is almost entirely virtual. And the main event will be taking place each night from 8 to 10 with primetime speeches slated for all 4 days. The National Party is taking a few cues from Texas Democrats who held their convention online in June. Our Margaret Chadbourne has more on how the convention will work this week.
Don't expect balloons and live crowds this year. It's a scaled-down Democratic National Convention.
It's a different format to engage with. And while we all would have loved to be in Milwaukee in person with each other, the reality is you got to put safety first.
The main speeches will be remote. Everything is going online. The party urged all delegates to stay home due to the pandemic and scrap the main events in Milwaukee. That's where the convention was supposed to be held. That means 280 Texas delegates are essentially working from home.
Caucus meetings have been going on for some time. The platform work, the resolutions work, all of that, those kinds of things have been going on for weeks, and folks have been engaging with that.
Presidential conventions are held by each party every 4 years and serve as a place to conduct official business, hear from party leaders, and shine a spotlight on the nominees. But Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won't travel to Milwaukee to accept the nomination. Manny Garcia of the Texas Democratic Party says delegates are conducting business remotely and mainly casting their votes for the nominees via email this year.
And the business of the convention has been in the works for weeks.
Most delegates we spoke to said they'll miss the enthusiasm the convention creates. Glenn Maxey of Austin has gone to 12 Democratic conventions.
What I remember about almost all of them is the excitement of being with that many people in a common sort of effort.
He says now it feels more like a political speech than a hands-on experience as a delegate.
I now have a collection of every sign that's ever been waved at a national convention since 1976. And so, I'm going to miss that. For the first year, there won't be any of those souvenirs, those memories.
Although unconventional, the goal this year remains uniting the party and generating strong support for the ticket.
Being in person is an important part of the political process, and I'm sorry that we're not going to have that experience.
Margaret Chadbourne, Capital Tonight.
We will have special coverage of the convention all week long. That kicks off at 8 tonight. Former First Lady Michelle Obama and Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont will headline the first night. Republicans get their turn virtually starting August 24th. As the Democratic convention begins, some Texas party leaders wish the state had a bigger role. There's no high-profile speaking slot devoted solely to a Texan. Some will be featured during primetime programming, including 2 Dallas area lawmakers and a Rising Stars pre-recorded segment. But state Democratic officials say they would have liked to have seen Beto O'Rourke or Julian Castro deliver a speech. Instead, the two will be featured in a panel with other former 2020 presidential candidates. Party leaders have been working for months to prove Texas is the biggest battleground state in 2020. Joining me now to discuss this further and his role in the convention is former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Julian Castro. Secretary Castro, welcome back to the program. I know that there's been a lot of frustration from Texas Democrats about you not getting a solo speaking role, others not being featured more prominently. There's been this hashtag, Let Julian Speak. What's your reaction to all of it?
Well, look, I know that the folks at the DNC have a tremendously difficult job this year, especially because normally they would have about 3 or 4 hours every night of primetime coverage. But this year, the networks are only giving them 1 hour on broadcast and cable. So, they've had to condense the program. Last week, I think the count was that there were 35 primetime speakers, only 3 of them were Latino, and there were no Texans. And I expressed my disappointment in that, and I think others did too. Quite apart from whether I'm speaking, I think the program should reflect the wonderful coalition, the beautiful, diverse coalition that we have as Democrats. Fortunately, over the weekend, they made some great announcements of folks like Colin Allred and Victoria Nyave and Eva Longoria, who's also a Texan. I think they've made some good announcements over the last few days, and it reflects a little bit more, I think, the importance of both Texas and the diverse community.
Speaking to that, I mean, do you think that the National Party, I know that they have added some of those names, but do you think it's doing a disservice by not having a Texan featured in that primetime lineup with this kind of solo speech? I mean, how could that help Biden in November?
Well, look, I mean, I wish we did have, a lot more Texans that were able to speak. No doubt that the 38 electoral votes of this state are up for grabs. At the same time, I think more important than the speaking, the talking, is the doing. And I'm confident that Joe Biden has a great chance to win Texas because they know his track record. They know that he's been about creating opportunity for everybody. He's been about investing in healthcare so that everybody gets the healthcare they should in this country, educational opportunities, small businesses, putting people back to work. So it's the doing, it's the track record. I think that's what folks are going to look at.
You did speak today at the DNC's Hispanic Caucus about what's at stake for Latinos this November. What's your main message, and what's the core message Latinos need to hear coming from Democrats during this convention?
For the last 4 years, we've had a president who believes in opportunity for some people. Joe Biden believes in opportunity for everyone. No matter what you look like, no matter, the color of your skin or your background, the Latino community is a very hardworking community. It's an entrepreneurial community. It's a community of faith, a community of love of country, a lot of military service. And I think they're ready for a president who actually believes in investing in better educational opportunity for our young people, investing in small business and entrepreneurship and not just big corporations, making sure that everybody is treated equally. And if we create that kind of America instead of Donald Trump's divisive America, then I think we're going to be a better off country, and including the Latino community.
Secretary, there's a new poll out today showing Biden leads Trump by about 9.5 percentage points among registered Hispanic voters in Texas, but Trump still leads overall. What do you think that says about Latinos' role in this election?
Well, look, 2020 is the first year where Latinos are going to be the largest non-white voting bloc. The numbers are growing quickly, including in Texas. We know that Texas is right there. The polls say that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are tied in this state. That means that with strong Latino turnout, we can put Joe Biden over the top. And so I'm doing everything that I can to get the word out. I spoke this morning at the DNC Hispanic Caucus. Others are doing their part as well. Because we can't take anything for granted. This is going to be a very unusual election. The usual knocking and dragging, so to speak, of knocking on people's doors and canvassing and trying to get low propensity voters out, that's not going to happen this year by and large. We're going to have to rely on digital efforts and phone calls and universal mail-in ballot, hopefully, if our post office is not sabotaged by this administration. So we saw 4 years ago, people did not expect Donald Trump to win. I don't expect that he's going to win this time, but I'm not going to take that for granted.
Lastly, real quickly, I mean, what do Democrats need to do this week to boost enthusiasm and make sure Texas voters head to the polls, particularly amid a pandemic?
Well, this week is about two things. I mean, it's about showcasing the great coalition that Democrats have put together, people from all different backgrounds and walks of life. I think that makes it different from the Republican Party. Ours is the big tent party. And then secondly, Joe Biden is a great nominee. I mean, he has a track record of investing in opportunity for people of all different backgrounds. He's going to, as he has said, build back better and make sure that we have a competent, effective government, unlike the one that we have right now. And he's going to ensure that people can pursue and reach their dreams the way that I know he feels he's been able to reach his. I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people here in Texas and throughout the United States.
Secretary Castro, I know we'll be speaking with you again a lot throughout this election season. Thank you so much for your time.
Take care.
And we want to further break down that new poll just mentioned. It's from the Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation and Rice University's Baker Institute. Overall, President Trump leads former Vice President Biden by 5 points among most likely voters in the state. But Texas Hispanics say they would vote for Biden over Trump, with Biden holding a nearly 10% lead among that voting bloc. Still, other results from the survey show Texas Hispanics with a four-year college degree back Trump over Biden by about 10 points, while the majority of Hispanics with a high school degree or some college support Biden by a similar margin. Joining me now is Jason Villalba, the president of the Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation, a nonprofit, nonpartisan group that analyzes the opinions and behaviors of Hispanic Texans. Jason, thanks for being on the program. Good to see you again. I mentioned some of the key findings of your poll there. Biden with that 10-point lead over Trump when it comes to Hispanic voters in Texas. What do you think that says about the role this voting bloc will play in November?
Well, I think the voting bloc is critical in this election for both Republicans and Democrats. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was able to get 27% of the Hispanic vote, in excess of 27% lead over Trump at the time. Now that lead is shrunk to 10%, which means that Hispanics are in play in Texas. If that occurs, then there is every possibility that either side could win that constituency, and that constituency will be the determining factor in the race coming up.
I mean, you're a Hispanic Republican, former state lawmaker. What do these candidates need to do to stand out, to win over Latino voters in Texas?
Well, what we've seen in the polling and what we've seen from candidates in the primaries is that so long as the candidates focus on the issues that impact the community, if they have a meaningful and real message about improving the lives of this constituency, then I think you'll see Hispanics move that direction. So we know that Bernie Sanders, for instance, in the primaries, did very well among Latinos in Texas. And the reason was because his message of education and healthcare for all was quite resonant with Hispanics. So if Biden or Trump focused on those kinds of issues, I think there's going to be an opportunity to get a greater percentage ownership of that constituency going into the election.
I want to ask you, the poll overall shows Trump with a larger lead than we've seen in several other recent polls with Biden in Texas. I mean, Biden has been slightly ahead, or the race has been a dead heat. How likely do you think this state is to flip this year?
Well, the polls that we've been seeing up to this point showed that Trump and Biden were essentially tied. Some instances actually showed Biden ahead in Texas. And that gave great wind in the sails of people who say that the state can be turned, and it may be able to be turned. What our poll found was that Trump was still ahead by about 5 points. In 2016, as you know, he won by 9 points. So we're not much different from that watermark from the last election. But what I do think is that because the Hispanic lead for Biden in this instance is only 10%, when Hillary Clinton had a 27% lead, that voting bloc by itself could flip that 5% and give Biden a small lead in the state. So I think the state is certainly winnable for Biden, but he has to run the table. And most importantly, he has to win an overwhelming majority of Latinos in Texas.
You also found similar results in the race for U.S. Senate between John Cornyn and M.J. Hagar. Cornyn leading overall by about 6 percentage points of most likely voters, but Hagar leads among Hispanic voters. What do you think the biggest takeaway there is?
Well, that race was a little more surprising to me. You know, Cornyn has been the United States Senator for 18 years in Texas. His name identification should have been much larger than what we saw in that poll. A 6% lead is fine 80 days out from the election, but I think it should have been much wider. I think Hager has a chance to, like Biden, overcome some of the existing institutional bias against Democrats in Texas and actually have an opportunity to win that race. Again, it will depend upon the constituency of Hispanics. If she can win a large percentage of Hispanics, she can overcome the 6-point lead that Cornyn has. Now, alternatively, Cornyn, if he continues to work in the areas of the state where he has worked in the past to win Hispanics, the RGV in North Texas and other areas, I think he can continue to hold that lead. And we still have to remember, too, it's 80 days out. Lots of the money hasn't been spent in these elections just yet. And so we'll see some of these name identification numbers go up as that money is poured into the campaigns.
Lastly, Jason, I mean, you guys looked at a lot of different things in this poll. I just wanted to ask, what other key findings did the survey unveil that really stood out to you?
The biggest takeaway that I found from it was the difference in disparity of Hispanics in Texas vis-a-vis other states. So a great example is educated Hispanics. So in other parts of the country, a higher educated Hispanic is going to be more likely to vote for Biden than Trump. But in Texas, the opposite is true. The same holds for English speaking at home. Hispanics are more likely to vote for Trump. Higher income Hispanics are more likely to vote for Trump. This is the exact opposite of what you would find in California and in Arizona and Nevada and Florida. And the reason we think it is because Texas is historically a very red state. And so because Hispanics are a part of the very fiber of Texas, rather than being first generation or new immigrants into the state, we've been here for as long as Texas has been Texas, that the further we become more acculturated like the general population, the more likely we're to follow the votes of the general population, which in this instance happens to lead towards Trump rather than Biden.
Jason Villalba, a lot of interesting things in this survey. We'll have a link to it up on our website. Thank you so much for your time. Good to see you.
Thank you, Karina. Have a great day.
And coming up next on Capitol Tonight, some students are returning to the classroom. That includes private schools after the Texas Attorney General said health officials can't close them down. We're taking a look at the steps one area school is taking to reopen amid the pandemic. Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Turning to the latest on the coronavirus in Texas. The state has surpassed 10,000 deaths, becoming just the 4th state to do so. Here's a look at the latest numbers. There were 51 new fatalities reported today. The number of new cases was about 2,700, but it's typical for numbers to be lower on Mondays due to lags in weekend reporting. Hospitalizations are currently at 6,200. The state's positivity rate is also now under 12%. Last week, health officials blamed coding errors and a system update for recent testing data issues that sent the positivity rate plummeting from a high of 25%. The continued spread of the virus continues to concern some teachers and parents as school resumes. Public schools across the state have the option to reopen to in-person learning, remain remote, or offer a mix of both. For private schools, the state attorney general is allowing them to decide when to reopen. It's a ruling that allowed a San Antonio Catholic school to welcome its students back on campus for class today. Our Sarah Duran gives us a look at their first day back during the pandemic.
Foster Haynes and Luke Darrington are ready for the new academic year.
Excited to see all my friends today because I haven't seen them in a long time.
Monday marked the first day of class for the middle school students. It's also the first time they've been on campus at St. Pius X Catholic School since March.
I packed pens for any test.
A lot looks different at the religious private school. Brought a backpack? It's no longer allowed.
Oh, well, I just brought my lunchbox, a water bottle, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
In addition to passing a temperature check, students are required to mask up. Markers on the wall and ceiling point out social distancing in the halls. And in the classroom, desks are spaced 6 feet apart.
I feel safe.
You don't really have to worry.
For now, the school is allowing parents to decide whether their kids return on campus. Among the 170 students enrolled in the pre-K through 8th grade school, about half came back for in-person instruction, while the rest are logging in from home.
We're making sure that everybody realizes we can do this safely.
It's a safety plan that came together with the help of parents, teachers, and health experts, carefully coming up with protocols for all situations that could happen.
We're prepared. We just hope that if we're the school that ends up with somebody that's positive, we deal with it well.
Now with their plan in play, prevention is key. With enhanced cleaning and healthy students, the school hopes the virus will stay away.
We believe it is important that the kids are here.
A belief Luke and Foster agree with.
We're all taking it very seriously.
For now, students at St. Pius X are on an early release schedule. It's all part of the school's plan to help reintegrate students back to school. Sarah Duran, Capital Tonight.
Sarah, thank you. The debate over Confederate markers at the state capitol took a new turn today. Senate Democrats want the statues taken down, but Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says that party put them up in the first place. In response to a letter from Democratic senators, Patrick did not say whether he's in favor of removal. His argument also does not acknowledge the political shift that happened as many conservative Democrats switched parties during the civil rights era. He accuses Democrats of wanting to remove the markers without having a serious conversation. The Lieutenant Governor formed a committee last year to review the artwork in the Texas Senate chamber. It has not met due to the pandemic, but Patrick says that will happen after the election. And still ahead on Capitol Tonight, fans will be allowed at Longhorn football games, but the stadium won't be packed. We've got the latest on the safety precautions the school is taking to keep fans safe right after the break. And before we go tonight, it's official. Fans will be allowed at Texas Longhorn games, but it'll be limited. In an email sent to Texas season ticket holders on Sunday, the athletic director confirmed it will be capped at 25%. The school also plans to release a socially distanced seating plan for fans. Governor Abbott has issued a statewide mandate of a 50% stadium capacity, but UT is following a recommended plan to keep attendance below that threshold. This comes after the Big 12 decided to continue with the season, even as other conferences decided to cancel. The Longhorns are set to start their season on September 12th. And that is going to do it for this edition of Capitol Tonight. I'll be back at 8 for special coverage of the Democratic National Convention. Then tomorrow we'll be joined by one of the Texans speaking at the event, Congressman Colin Allred. Plus, Dr. John Zerwas, who serves on the governor's coronavirus task force, will be on to talk about the state's response. Join us for those stories and more Tuesday at 7. Thanks for watching. I'll see you back here at 8.